We are green across the board. Jim Cramer, how much is riding on after the close today? You can take Microsoft first and whether it's a referendum on tech itself.
I think Microsoft could be. I believe that because one of the things that we've accepted is away from Apple. And I listened to the great report just now on Jamp, the new IPO from Carl and John. You don't have enough to go on anything. You've got that Apple news that Apple's doing very well, and that was the Katie Huber report. And then you have Microsoft. And then we've got this chasm before we have a lot of other companies because we feel that kind of covers everything. Microsoft does a lot of stay-at-home. Microsoft has got that lawsuit that was just filed against them by Slack, and I don't know if they'll respond to that directly. I'm sure the ADOS will hit it. But most important is Microsoft's Azure has been growing endlessly and fabulously. A lot of people think growing much faster than Amazon Web Services. So if that continues, then I think the stock goes higher.
Pete, is this a referendum on tech and maybe on the market? If this report comes in well, people are going to say that's why all that money had flown into tech to begin with. That's why the market is where it is. And if this number doesn't come up to snuff, people are going to say, I told you these stocks went too far too fast, and Microsoft is case study number one.
Yeah, and that would be a huge disappointment because, Scott, there's no reason in the world why they didn't just knock it out of the park. I mean, Jim brings up so many great points there, talking about Azure and their growth levels. Their growth levels right now, when you look at them balanced against AWS, it's not even comparable. They are making some room, and they are pushing themselves into the world that AWS owned for a really long period of time. And then you add in Teams. Look at the growth that they had. Just since late April, you take a look at some of those numbers, and 75 million from 45 million and all these different numbers that they've got. They are growing in all the right places, Scott. So I think I am expecting this to be a monstrously strong report that's going to give us some huge numbers.
Right?
But
it better be. How can you have a stock chart that looks like that? The one you're talking about right now, we're looking at the chart. How can it look like that and not have a blowout number? I mean, the bar, Pete, is high.
It is really high. But you know what? This is not just a this quarter, this year story, Scott. This is a multi-year story from the time Satya Nadella took over and refocused this company. They're in the right place. They are one of the winners when you look at what's going on when everybody had to completely shut down and be out of the markets and be out of the stores and be out of just about everything. Who does that favor? It absolutely plays right into Microsoft and where they are, what they're doing, cloud and everything else. They better beat, and they better beat in a big way, and I absolutely anticipate that they will.
Steph, is Microsoft now too expensive? 35 times. Is it worth that?
Well, it is expensive, and the setup is not terrific because it is also up 28% on the year. So people expect all things that what Jim and Pete just said. They touch all the endpoints that are actually seeing such strong momentum. I mean, we got IDC growth for PCs alone last month up 12%. So they have exposure there. Cloud, both Jim and Pete mentioned, 61% constant currency growth last quarter in cloud. But the total addressable market in cloud is $600 billion by 2022. So they should continue to gain share and see gains not only from Amazon, but they should be able to gain market share in general from other players too. And then, of course, the stay-at-home trade, right? LinkedIn, Skype, Teams, that sort of thing. So I think it's expensive. I think there's a very good chance they could have a great number and the stock sells off. But this is a core position for me. Yeah. It has been for a very long time. It almost reminds me of like a Costco. It's just a compounder that's in all the right places. Yeah.
Oh, how times have changed, too. And I never, 5 years ago, you didn't hear anybody talk about Microsoft the way you do now. Jim, how do you answer the question? Is Microsoft too expensive at 35 times forward?
Look, I think we're in some sort of moment where people are doing relative analysis. I know when you do relative analysis, that's usually just not as rigorous as absolute, but it is doing so many things right, so much better than so many other companies that you want us to say, okay, well, look, this one's growing faster than of the major companies, faster than almost everybody. So we got to give it some multiple that recognizes how fast it is. But it is not like we can come back and say, you know what, and that deserves no more than 30. Nothing should have more than a 30 multiple. I was watching, I had Okta last night, and people were saying, listen, as long as that's 20 times sales. I mean, these are painful. What I'm saying is these are painful. but I don't know how to value it other than to say that it's worth a lot more than other companies because it is doing well. And that may be fatuous logic, but when I see what they're doing with Azure, when I see what they're doing taking share, I mean, pretty much everywhere, that the addressable market that Steph just mentioned is so gigantic that I come back and say, I don't know, it's worth a lot more than most of the companies I follow because it is unique. It is unlike any other company, and it is doing well. I know that doesn't sound like great logic, but you got to find a price for something. And the fact is, and Steph will certainly verify this, you could drill that $210.71 bid for 10 million shares, and you'd only knock it down about 17. So let's just say, even if it goes down, the buyers will come back.
You, Jim, just said something I find so interesting, and I think is worth debating. This idea of not knowing how to value something like even Microsoft. The fact of the matter is we don't know how to value anything in this market.